The concept of a strategy originates in war. Whatever we know about strategy has come from the environment we are grown up. We are grown up listening stories on multiple fights our past generation did for freedom, to set up human rights, and to develop social practices. All these fights gives a very strong underlying message that the objective of a strategy must be to crush the enemy. The another important part of our thought process is the sports we have grown up playing and watching, where we have been taught that one's gain can only come at the expense of others' defeat. Whether it is a war or it is a sport, the objective is to destroy the enemy. We are an inherently competitive species, hence we are tempted to think of business as war or business as a sport, where the enemy is your competitor and your approach towards competition is to crush the enemy. As we believe that one's gain can only come at the expense of our rivals, where winning means that the other guy is losing. With this background, in the year 1980, the concept of killing the competition was widely accepted in the field of business when Michael Porter gave academic standing to this way of thinking. When he made the idea of competitive advantage popular with his best-selling book, Competitive Strategy. A decade and a half later, Microsoft gave corporate life to the crush your competition version of a strategy when they publicly went after Netscape as the dot-com era was just heating up. And over time, this approach is followed by giants like Beat Coke if you are Pepsi, by Detroit if you are Chrysler, and a holy war between Google and Apple. Today, we see military metaphors used everywhere in business, like price war, market share battle, marketing campaigns, and even bullet points. Books on war are often cited as sources of great wisdom for business strategy. Being competitive is an intimate part of business, but the aspect which disappoints is the performance in long run. Between the year 1996 and 2004, many brands followed the crush your competition version of strategy, but the data on long-term success rate is critical. It's observed that around 66% of the brands could deliver competitive practices efficiently, but less than 7% brands could only grow in long run. To know the relevance to success in the context of competitive environment, more than 200 brands, their competitive approaches and consumers' preferences were screened across different cultures. The summary of this analysis provides an eye-opening facts and figures. The summary differentiates competitive practices into two different groups, into two different approaches. The first group, the first approach is a traditional view and found very common with most of managers. In this way of practice, the core area of focus is to negotiate on existing value chain. Managers were found negotiating with price to reduce the market share of core competitors. They were also found negotiating with margins to break the competitive dynamics at the cost of compromising with their own profitability. They were found coming out with multiple attractive offers and many more such activities which pull buyers at any cost to crush the competitors. This approach is also known as Me Too approach, where your action doesn't display a differentiating meaning and your efforts are directed towards pulling down competitors instead adding value for customers. This approach works well for a short run where an immediate gain is attained, compromising on multiple elements of existing value chain, but in long-term prospect, such approach is not advised. The second approach is a broad view of competition and is very difficult to practice. This approach challenges the established view of competition and encourages innovation. This approach is not about competitors, it is about customers. It is about enhancing the existing value chain for customers to make the experience better. It is about expanding the domain of the market with an objective to develop new concept, serve more market and address concern in different contexts. It also means to serve the area of non-consumption. It is based on enhancing the meaning behind the consumption of the product or services. Moreover, it allows to practice a job-based exercises to facilitate customers to meet the need in a much easier and broader way. It's a long-term game which takes a lot of efforts, innovation and cost. These findings suggest to change the view towards competition. There is something very critical to understand that war is mostly a zero-sum game, but business is mostly not. Business is not a war, business is not a sport. A strategy in business is different than a strategy in war or a strategy in sport. It is not about competitors, it is about customer. It is about your total value proposition. And it is about the capabilities you need to develop to deliver it better than anyone else. Companies that fail to challenge the established views of what their industries sell and how they operate miss valuable opportunities and leave themselves vulnerable to potential disruptors. When leaders think of business as a war with their competitors, they seek to beat the rivals in such a way that don't meaningfully enhance customer perceived benefits. Such moves rarely grow the total market and almost always produce lower margins and losing products. This is what happened when GM and Ford went to a war with Japanese in the late 1970s and 80s, and when the mainstream airline took a costly turn because they tried to beat JetBlue and Southwest Airlines with their own discount airlines. When strategy is about competitors, leaders lose focus on the unlimited opportunities to grow customer value. Even Apple made a big mistake when they declared a thermonuclear war on Google to destroy the Android operating system and subsequently introduced Apple's own version of Google Maps, a clearly inferior product whose only real purpose was to inflict harm on the competition. Competition is the core for the success and failure of a company because your competition is the one who determines how accurate you are in multiple contexts and reinforces your performance to practice innovation, cohesive culture, and good implementation. Competitive advantage should be seen evaluating the strength of existing value chain as being competitive is a dynamic process and this dynamic process must be managed effectively throughout the entire value chain of the business. Aviation industry operates in a highly sensitive, very challenging and very competitive environment with lots of limitations. All players here provide what a passenger need to travel. In fact, all passengers provide a fixed value chain. The challenge is the scope of expansion in services in a big way to provide differential experiences to passengers is very less due to technical challenges. It is very difficult to add more services. JetBlue was one of these players fighting against much experienced players. JetBlue systematically studied traditional airlines offering and they tried to understand what customers liked, what they disliked, and what they didn't care about. This strategy of focus, what really matters, enabled Jet to improve the customer experiences, enhancing the elements of existing value chain, like providing more legroom, ease in check-in, and providing free and healthy meals. The idea is in such environment where innovation is limited by challenges, one can simply improve the existing value chain to give a premium travel experience at a discount price. Enhancing the existing value chain, JetBlue could penetrate deep in a highly competitive market. The value chain analysis provides a rational and symmetrical framework to describe and evaluate the role, motivation, and behavior in the context of cultural, social, and economic drivers. This includes the added value activities between different parts of the value chain. This is a very unique way to grow business without disturbing the competitive dynamics. It is about creating new value for customer. It is about expanding the domain of the market with an objective to develop new concept. It is also about serving more market and address concern in different contexts. It also means to serve the area of non-consumption. Businesses that take a broad view of competition not only differentiate themselves in the market but also broaden the overall market for everyone. Companies are rewarded when they create new value for customers and grow the market for everyone. None benefited more than Jet from its early adoption of jet airliner, but that move not only benefited Jet, it also expanded the market for all airlines, expanding the scope of domain. iPhone didn't just make Apple a leader among smartphones. It also greatly expanded the market for all mobile voice and mobile data company. As iPhone developed a concept of a smartphone, iPhone redefined what a smartphone can do with many added features. In this case also, iPhone expanded the scope of market and product and created new domain. Starbucks became a global icon in less than 20 years. Starbucks didn't just serve coffee to customers, but it also developed the concept of premium coffee and created millions of new customers for premium coffee, creating new value for customers. Starbucks expanded the scope of coffee and generated new markets. Facebook and Microsoft not only created a new platform for social networking but also created platforms for individuals and organizations to grow business. In this case, these companies developed a new concept to address concern in different contexts and expanded the scope of existing domain. In each case, the new value created for customers expanded the pie for everyone while giving the company who initiated the bigger slice of the pie. Businesses never has to be a zero-sum game, particularly beyond a very short term, because there is no limit to create new customer value. Looking through a job-based lens provides a different view. As per this view, competitors can be any offering that satisfy the same job. This means that in different contexts, the field of competitors changes. This concept came into the picture when a sports club in UK conducted a study to know the sports facilities need to be improved to develop the preferences of members. After engaging in some qualitative research with existing members, the club came into an interesting realization. Upon asking these members what jobs they were trying to get done in their first weeks or first month of the club noticed that the answer of playing tennis or playing any other game was actually showing up much lower on the list than expected. One end of the spectrum, members talked about jobs related to staying fit and healthy or enhancing their overall well-being. On the other end of the spectrum, however, a surprising number of members talked about how they joined the club as a way of meeting people. Some were looking for business-oriented networking opportunities, others were simply looking to meet new friends. Armed with this new knowledge, the club focused on delivering experiences that were specifically designed to satisfy those jobs. Looking at what your industry is selling or how things have been done so far may offer some helpful insights, but it is not the key ingredient for innovation. Organizations need to recognize that they are not simply selling products or services. They are selling ways to get the job done. In the case of this sport club, the competition is not just the other sports club in the city. All those places, all those activities which encourages fitness are the competition for this club. All those events, all those gatherings which facilitate networking among people are also competition for this club. Competitors can be any offering that satisfy the same job. Taking a job-based point of view and truly understanding what your customers are looking for, what they're trying to get done in their lives increases the number of ways in which you can satisfy your customers and set yourself apart from the competition. Let us think about footwear. What can be the competition for a pair of Nike sneakers? If the job is defined as providing comfortable foot support for runners, the competition will be the sneakers from New Balance or Brooks or some other brand. But what about the people who are trying to accomplish emotional jobs when they buy a pair of sneakers? If the job is expressing individualism, the competition could be a new hairstyle. Or if the job is projecting status, then the competition could be an expensive fitness watch. Competitors can be any offering that satisfy the same job. Nike recognizes that its core customers look for more jobs than just those of comfort and support in footwear. Nike also recognizes that every time a customer satisfies one of those emotional jobs by visiting a hair salon or buying an expensive watch, the customer has less incentive to buy a new pair of sneakers. That is why Nike has moved beyond the traditional tactics such as associating athletes with its product to find new ways to satisfy the emotional jobs for customers. A similar concept is captured by YouTube in a big way. People spend a lot of time watching television and listening music. So, in this case, to compare, one need to develop technology in the area of coming with new television or new music system. YouTube recognized that the purpose is not just to listen music or watch television. The purpose is to satisfy emotions, interacting characters and content from television or music system. YouTube is just a website with all these content which satisfy the same job. Hence, without developing the television or music system, they could capture the domain. Competitors can be any offering that satisfy the same job. Enhancing the meaning behind a brand purchase is a very unique and useful way to develop the business. As per the modern conception of self, material possessions are thought to be the extension of our identity, and the extended self is produced through the relation with other people or context. As per a study on consumers' knowledge, the features of a product and their preferences were observed, and it was surprising to know that most of the consumers couldn't tell the feature which made them to buy the product. It was noticed that most of consumers buying brands like Apple, brands like Mercedes were not aware about all unique and differentiating features of Apple or Mercedes, but they will buy only these brands because it is not only about the product, it is also about the meaning behind, the symbol behind, the identity behind the product. Apart from the physical and functional benefits, consumers look for symbolic benefits because these symbolic signaling value serve as mean of construction and expression of self. Human beings attach meaning to purchase because we regard purchase as a part of ourself. The meaning consumers attach to purchase is the key in understanding the consumption pattern and driver that motivate consumers' symbolic consumption. The meaning reflected is the base of general assessment of a brand and its relationship with consumers. Moreover, it works as an important source of differentiation and positioning, hence meaning behind the consumption can be a powerful tool to build brand equity. Consumers ascribe personality to brands, and meaning has to be reflected as consumers' own personality and belief or the personality and belief of an ideal user of the brand. This process is central to consumers' symbolic construction of self. The nature of the process revolves around the exchange of symbolic values, and it is evaluated by consumers based on the extent they contribute to the construction and expression of them. Consumer self is structured in two dimensions. Apart from using possessions and enhance our sense of self, consumers use possessions to express self to others. Consumers use brands to define themselves to others, demonstrate group of affiliation, and tell a story of who they are and what they stand for. Consumers use brands to play out their personal stories, identities, and positioning themselves in relation to culture, society, and other people. The logic is the greater congruence is between the brand meaning and consumer's personality, the greater is the consumer's preferences.